You are living in medieval Europe. The year barely matters because the idea you are about to encounter remained stable for centuries. You wake up in a small room with cold stone walls. The air smells faintly of smoke, wool, and something sour from last night's food. You feel tired, you feel heavy. You feel a little irritable for no clear reason. To you, this does not feel mysterious. It feels physical, and in the medieval world, your emotional state is not something happening inside your thoughts. It is happening inside your fluids. This is the world of the four humors. You are told from childhood that your body is governed by four internal substances: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. These are not metaphors. They are not symbols. They are real liquids believed to circulate through your body, settle in organs and determine how you think, feel, behave, and survive. If you are calm today, it is because your humors are balanced. If you are angry tomorrow, one of them has risen. If you feel sad for weeks at a time, something inside you has thickened, cooled, or stagnated. This idea comes from ancient Greek medicine, especially the writings associated with Hippocrates, and later expanded by Galen. By the medieval period, it is no longer debated. It is the foundation of medicine, psychology, and moral judgment. University-trained physicians, village healers, monks, and ordinary parents all accept it. You do not question it any more than you question gravity. Each humor carries qualities. Blood is hot and wet. Phlegm is cold and wet. Yellow bile is hot and dry. Black bile is cold and dry. These qualities matter deeply. They are connected to the seasons, the elements, and the structure of the universe. Spring encourages blood, winter encourages phlegm, autumn thickens black bile, summer dries you with yellow bile. You are not separate from nature. You are porous to it. Your personality is explained through this system. If you are cheerful, sociable, optimistic, and energetic, you are sanguine. You have abundant blood. If you are calm, slow, thoughtful, and emotionally steady, you are phlegmatic. If you are ambitious, angry, restless, and sharp-tongued, yellow bile dominates you. If you are sad, reflective, withdrawn, and anxious, black bile has taken hold. These are not casual labels. They are medical conclusions. They shape how others treat you. A melancholic person is not just sad, they are at risk. Too much black bile is associated with madness, despair, religious doubt, and even demonic influence. A choleric person is not just angry, they are dangerously overheated. Their body must be cooled before their temper destroys them, or others. As you go about your day, every sensation becomes evidence. A headache is not random. It may indicate rising bile. A lack of appetite suggests coldness in the stomach. Excessive dreaming may mean your humors are unsettled at night. Even moral failure is sometimes explained this way. A man who cannot control his lust is said to have hot blood. A woman who weeps easily is described as moist and cold by nature. You do not think of yourself as having a mind separate from your body. Thought itself is physical. Memory resides in specific chambers of the brain. Imagination is a risky faculty that can disturb the humors if left unchecked. Too much thinking can dry the body. Too much reading can overheat the blood. Silence and routine are praised because they keep the fluids stable. Medical advice reflects this worldview. If you are sad, you may be told to eat warming foods. If you are angry, you are told to avoid spices and wine. If you are sluggish, you should exercise gently and expose yourself to sunlight. Everything you consume has a temperament. Bread can be hot or cold, depending on how it is baked. Fish is cold and moist. Red meat is hot and dry. Even emotions have dietary consequences. Bloodletting becomes one of the most common treatments. The idea is simple. If you have too much of a humor, you remove it. This is not done randomly. Veins are chosen carefully. The time of year matters. The phase of the moon matters. Removing blood at the wrong time can kill you. Removing it at the right time is believed to restore balance and clarity. You might be bled for sadness. You might be bled for headaches. You might be bled simply because spring has arrived, and blood is thought to rise naturally during that season. This is preventative medicine. It is psychology practiced with knives and bowls. For ordinary people, this system provides comfort. Your suffering has a cause. Your personality is not a moral failing alone. It is a bodily condition that can be managed. You are not broken. You are unbalanced. Balance can be restored with the right foods, the right habits, and the right interventions. But this worldview also creates quiet pressure. If you are melancholic, you are expected to manage it. Too much sadness is dangerous. Too much introspection is suspicious. Monks write about the sin of acedia, a kind of spiritual lethargy linked to black bile. Emotional states blur into moral judgments. To feel wrong is to be physically wrong. Children grow up being categorized early. A lively child is sanguine. A quiet one is phlegmatic. These labels follow them into adulthood. They shape expectations about marriage, work, and religious devotion. Certain temperaments are considered better suited to leadership. Others are considered weak or unstable. Women are often described as colder and wetter by nature. This is used to explain emotional volatility, physical weakness, and intellectual inferiority. Men are described as hotter and drier, closer to perfection. These ideas are not fringe beliefs. They appear in medical texts, sermons, and household advice manuals. You live your entire life inside this framework. When you fall ill, when you grieve, when you fall in love, when you lose your temper, the explanation is always internal and fluid. You are a vessel of moving substances. Your task is to keep them in harmony. And yet, cracks quietly appear. Some people remain melancholic, despite every treatment. Some people grow calmer after bloodletting when theory predicts they should weaken. Some live long lives, despite constant imbalance. These inconsistencies are noted, but rarely challenged. The system is too vast, too connected to religion and natural philosophy to discard easily. As you lie down at night, wrapped in wool, listening to the distant sounds of animals and wind, you might wonder something quietly and without words. If your thoughts are fluids and your emotions are seasons, then what part of you is truly choosing how to feel? And if balance can never be permanent, what happens when the humors refuse to obey? You continue living inside the logic of the four humors, and over time you notice that it is not only physicians who care about balance. Everyone does. Your neighbors watch one another closely. A sudden change in mood is remarked upon. Excessive laughter is suspicious. Long silence is worrying. In a world without modern psychology, emotional consistency is treated as a sign of physical health, moral stability, and social reliability. If you begin to withdraw from daily routines, people assume black bile is accumulating. If you speak too loudly or too often, yellow bile is blamed. This belief shapes how much space you are allowed to take up. It shapes how much patience others have for your behavior. It even shapes whether your suffering is taken seriously or quietly dismissed as a natural flaw in your constitution. Medical texts of the medieval period are filled with lists. Lists of foods, lists of emotions, lists of behaviors. Everything is classified by its effect on the humors. Garlic heats the blood, lettuce cools the stomach, wine excites yellow bile, milk increases phlegm, sleep moistens the body, wakefulness dries it, sex is draining and heating. Celibacy is cooling but can also lead to dangerous stagnation if taken too far. You are advised not to think too intensely late at night, because it overheats the brain. You are advised not to sleep too much, because it increases moisture and dulls the senses. Moderation becomes the highest virtue, not just morally but medically. Balance is survival. Mental distress is rarely treated as an internal narrative or a personal history. It is treated as a mechanical problem. Something is too thick, too thin, too hot, too cold. Treatments are therefore practical and repetitive. Change the diet, change the daily schedule, adjust the environment, move closer to sunlight, avoid damp air, sit near fires but not too close. For the wealthy, this system offers constant intervention. Physicians visit regularly. Urine is inspected in glass flasks, and compared to charts, color, cloudiness and sediment are studied closely. Your urine is thought to reveal the state of your mind. Dark urine suggests melancholy. Pale urine suggests excess phlegm. The mind leaves traces everywhere if you know how to look. For the poor, self-diagnosis is common. You learn to interpret your own sensations. A heavy chest means coldness. A racing heart means heat. You treat yourself with what is available. Certain herbs, simple broths, long walks, silence, prayer. Even prayer is thought to influence the humors by calming internal motion. Religious life absorbs this framework easily. Monks write about spiritual dryness and spiritual heat using the same language as physicians. Temptation is linked to bodily warmth. Despair is linked to coldness and heaviness. The devil is believed to exploit imbalanced bodies. A person weakened by melancholy is thought to be more vulnerable to dark thoughts and spiritual attack. This creates a quiet fear of the mind itself. Thinking too much becomes dangerous. Introspection is risky. Imagination is treated with suspicion. Medieval scholars warn that vivid imagination can physically alter the body. A pregnant woman who imagines frightening images may mark the child. A person who dwells on sorrow may thicken their black bile permanently. As a result, emotional restraint is praised. Emotional neutrality is ideal. Extremes of feeling are treated as symptoms. You are not encouraged to explore your sadness. You are encouraged to counteract it. You are not asked why you are angry. You are told how to cool yourself. Over time, certain temperaments become associated with professions. Sanguine individuals are thought to be good leaders and speakers. Phlegmatic people are valued for patience and endurance. Choleric individuals are useful in war and command, but must be watched carefully. Melancholic individuals are paradoxical. They are feared and respected. Medieval thinkers associate melancholy with both madness and genius. Scholars and artists are often described as melancholic by nature. This idea allows intellectual suffering to be tolerated in small doses. A scholar who withdraws and broods may be excused. His black bile is seen as the source of deep thought, but there is a limit. Too much melancholy crosses into danger. At that point, intervention is required. The treatments grow more aggressive when balance does not return. Bloodletting becomes more frequent. Strong purgatives are prescribed to force bile out of the body. Vomiting is induced. Sweating is encouraged. Enemas are used. These are not seen as cruel. They are seen as logical responses to a stubborn imbalance. You endure these treatments because there is no alternative explanation. If you resist, you are accused of ignoring your own health. If you fail to improve, the blame often falls on your lifestyle or your moral discipline. Perhaps you ate incorrectly. Perhaps you slept too much. Perhaps you allowed sinful thoughts to linger. This creates a subtle burden of responsibility. Your emotions are your fault, even when they are physical. You are expected to regulate yourself constantly. There is little room for rest from yourself. Yet, despite all this structure, the system struggles with contradiction. Women are described as naturally cold and wet, yet also accused of excessive passion. Old age is described as cold and dry, yet elders are often portrayed as angry or stubborn. These inconsistencies are noted but explained away rather than examined deeply. Medical writers adjust definitions to preserve the framework. A woman may have sudden heat despite her cold nature. An old man may retain excessive bile from youth. The theory bends rather than breaks. It remains dominant because it explains everything loosely enough to survive. As you age, your own temperament is expected to change. Youth is hot and moist. Adulthood is balanced. Old age is cold and dry. Emotional decline is anticipated. Sadness is normalized. Forgetfulness is expected. You are told this is natural. It is the humors settling and drying. This belief offers comfort, but also resignation. If sadness belongs to age, why resist it? If confusion belongs to dryness, why question it? The idea that the mind might change independently of fluids never fully forms. And still, there are moments that do not fit. People who remain joyful in hardship. People who grow wiser without growing colder. People whose sadness lifts without blood or herbs. These moments pass quietly, unrecorded, absorbed into the noise of daily life. You fall asleep again, your body heavy under blankets, your thoughts slower now. You have been told all your life that balance is fragile and temporary, that perfect harmony exists only briefly, that vigilance is necessary. But if imbalance explains everything, then does it explain anything at all? And if the mind is only a mixture of fluids, what happens to responsibility, choice and meaning when the mixture changes? You reach the later edge of the medieval world, and the four humors still govern how people understand themselves. Yet something has begun to shift quietly beneath the surface. The theory remains in place, but confidence in its completeness slowly weakens. This does not happen through sudden discovery or dramatic correction. It happens through routine failure and quiet adjustment. People keep applying the system because it is all they have, even as its limits become harder to ignore. You are still bled when sadness lingers. You are still cooled when anger rises. But physicians begin to write longer explanations when treatments fail. They add exceptions. They add footnotes. They introduce ideas like hidden obstructions or inherited temperaments. The language grows more complex because reality refuses to remain simple. One change comes through anatomy. Human dissection becomes more common in universities. When bodies are opened, physicians do not find pools of black bile or chambers filled with yellow bile in the way texts describe. They see organs. They see tissues. They see blood in motion, but not in moral categories. This does not destroy the theory, but it introduces discomfort. The humors become harder to locate physically. Another change comes through observation of behavior over time. Physicians notice that emotional states can shift rapidly without any clear bodily intervention. Grief can lift after conversation. Fear can vanish in moments of safety. Anger can dissolve with reassurance. These changes happen too fast to be explained by digestion or seasonal influence. They are noted quietly and explained vaguely as sudden redistribution of internal qualities. You also see the influence of social conditions more clearly. Famine increases melancholy across entire regions. War produces anxiety and rage in people of every temperament. Plague brings despair regardless of diet or constitution. The humors struggle to explain collective emotion. They were designed to explain individual balance, not shared trauma. Still, the theory persists, because it offers structure. It tells you that suffering is understandable. It tells you that the body and the world are connected. It tells you that care and routine matter. Even as new ideas emerge, the four humors remain a useful language for describing experience. By the early modern period, physicians begin blending humoral theory with new mechanical ideas. The body becomes a system of circulation and pressure. Fluids still matter, but they move according to physical laws rather than cosmic harmony. Emotions begin to be described as reactions rather than imbalances. The humors slowly lose their authority, but not their vocabulary. You notice that words like melancholy and choler remain in use long after belief fades. People continue to describe themselves this way because the terms feel accurate. They capture something real about mood and temperament, even if the explanation has changed. The language outlives the science. This is one of the lasting effects of medieval popular psychology. It shapes how people talk about themselves for centuries. Even today you hear echoes of it. You describe yourself as balanced or unbalanced. You speak of hot tempers and cool heads. You talk about being drained or overwhelmed. These phrases come from a time when emotions were treated as physical substances. The humoral system also leaves a mark on how suffering is managed. The medieval insistence on routine sleep, diet, movement, and environment anticipates modern ideas about mental health care. The difference lies in explanation, not practice. People learned that bodies and minds require maintenance. They learned that neglect worsens distress. They learned that care must be regular, not reactive. At the same time, the system leaves behind harm. It teaches people to distrust their thoughts. It teaches them to suppress feeling rather than understand it. It frames emotional difference as defect. It ties morality to physiology in ways that justify exclusion and control. Those labeled imbalanced are managed rather than heard. You see this clearly in how melancholy was treated. The melancholic person is pitied and feared. Their sadness is tolerated only within limits. When it exceeds expectation, intervention becomes forceful. There is little space for asking why the sadness exists. There is only pressure to remove it. As humoral theory fades, these patterns do not disappear immediately. New explanations replace old ones, but the desire to normalize emotion remains strong. The medieval legacy teaches later societies to medicalize distress before listening to it. It teaches them to seek correction before understanding. Yet there is also resilience in this history. People endured hardship with the tools they had. They sought balance in a world that offered little stability. They used the language of fluids to make sense of pain that had no clear cause. In doing so, they created one of the earliest systems for discussing mental life at all. You imagine an ordinary person lying awake at night centuries ago. They feel heavy and restless. They blame black bile. They do not have words for trauma or depression, but they do have a framework that tells them their suffering is real and shared. That alone brings a measure of comfort. The four humors were wrong in their mechanics. Thoughts are not fluids. Emotions do not thicken or dry like substances. But the medieval effort to explain the mind was not foolish. It was careful. It was systematic. It was deeply human. As the centuries move forward, the theory dissolves into history, but its influence remains quietly present in how people describe personality, how they judge emotion, and how they seek balance in daily life. The medieval mind did not separate body and thought. It insisted they were one. In that insistence there is both limitation and insight. When you look back, you see a long attempt to understand what it means to feel and endure. You see people using the tools of their time to name invisible experiences. You see a world trying to sleep through uncertainty by believing that order exists beneath discomfort. And perhaps the most lasting lesson is not about fluids at all. It is about the need to explain ourselves, even when the explanation is imperfect. The medieval world teaches that humans will always create stories to make suffering bearable, and that those stories shape care, judgment, and survival, long after the science behind them has faded. You are still living in the medieval world, but now the focus narrows. The broad system of the four humors fades into the background, and one condition begins to dominate: quiet conversations, sermons, medical texts, and household advice. It is not a sudden illness. It is not an injury. It is a way of being that unfolds slowly and settles in for years. It is called melancholy. You do not wake up one day and announce that you are melancholic. Others notice first. You are quieter than before. You linger too long over simple tasks. You avoid conversation. Your face seems heavier. Your sleep becomes restless or excessive. These changes are not interpreted as personal choices. They are interpreted as symptoms of a body that has tilted toward coldness and dryness. Melancholy is believed to come from black bile, the cold and dry humor. But by the medieval period, black bile is no longer just a fluid. It becomes a temperament, a risk, and eventually a lifestyle category. To be melancholic is not only to feel sad, it is to live incorrectly in subtle ways. Physicians describe melancholy as persistent sorrow without obvious cause, but the definition expands quickly. Excessive thinking, fear without danger, love of solitude, slowness of speech, difficulty finding joy, all of these are folded into the diagnosis. You are not required to be miserable all the time. You only need to lean inward. Unlike fever or wounds, melancholy has no clear beginning or end. It creeps in, it lingers, it becomes familiar. This makes it especially troubling. A person with melancholy can still work, pray, marry, and raise children, but they do so under a cloud that never fully lifts. Medieval society struggles with how to respond to this kind of suffering. One reason melancholy becomes so important is that it appears most often among people who think: scholars, clerics, students, writers. Anyone who spends long hours reading, copying texts, or praying in silence is considered at risk. The mind turned inward is believed to dry the body and thicken black bile. You are warned not to study too late at night. You are warned not to read on an empty stomach. You are warned not to isolate yourself for too long. These are not moral warnings alone. They are medical ones. Too much thinking is not just tiring, it is dangerous. At the same time, melancholy gains a strange prestige. Ancient authorities associate it with brilliance. Aristotle is quoted as suggesting that great philosophers are melancholic. Medieval scholars repeat this idea carefully. Melancholy can sharpen perception. It can deepen reflection. It can lead to insight unavailable to cheerful minds. This creates tension. A small amount of melancholy is admired, too much is feared. You are expected to hover in a narrow space where sadness produces wisdom but not paralysis. This balance is difficult to maintain. For ordinary people, melancholy is treated as a failure of daily management. You may be told that you eat incorrectly, that you sleep at the wrong hours, that you live in damp air, that you avoid sunlight. Your environment is examined closely. A cold house encourages black bile. A quiet life allows thoughts to stagnate. Treatments focus on gentle correction. Warm foods, light exercise, pleasant company, music, storytelling. Physicians recommend gardens and fresh air. They suggest travel if possible. Melancholy is not treated with urgency at first. It is treated as something that can be eased with habit. Religious authorities also weigh in. Melancholy is linked to acedia, a spiritual condition described as weariness of the soul. It is not exactly sin, but it is dangerous. A person afflicted by acedia finds prayer dull and routine meaningless. They feel distant from faith without rejecting it openly. This makes melancholy spiritually suspicious. You are encouraged to confess your sadness. You are urged to remain socially engaged. Too much solitude invites temptation. Too much reflection opens the door to doubt. The melancholic person must be watched with care. Over time, melancholy becomes less of an illness and more of an identity. People speak of having a melancholic nature. This explains lifelong patterns. A person who never quite fits into communal joy is described this way. The label offers explanation, but also limits. If you are melancholic by nature, improvement is possible, but full transformation is unlikely. This belief affects marriage. A melancholic spouse is considered difficult. They are thought to require patience and supervision. Their moods are tolerated but not indulged. Their sadness is accepted only if it does not disrupt household order. It also affects work. Melancholic individuals are thought to be unreliable in labor, requiring speed or cheerfulness, but they are valued in roles demanding focus and endurance. Scribes, account keepers, watchmen, roles where quiet attention matters. Children are watched for signs early. A child who prefers solitude or play without noise may be labeled melancholic. This shapes expectations. Their path is adjusted accordingly. They are guided towards study rather than trade, reflection rather than action. The diagnosis offers stability in a world with few psychological tools, but it also freezes people in place. Once labeled, you carry the explanation with you. Your sadness is no longer situational. It is constitutional. Despite all this, melancholy remains difficult to manage. Some people improve with changes, others do not. Physicians grow frustrated. They write about stubborn cases, about melancholy that resists diet and company, about sadness without clear physical cause. In these moments, the language grows vague. Writers describe hidden obstructions, vapors rising to the brain, invisible residues left by past experiences. These explanations stretch the theory without abandoning it. As you lie awake again, aware of your own thoughts moving slowly and heavily, you may wonder whether melancholy is something you have, or something you are. If sadness becomes routine, does it stop being an illness? And if a whole life can be shaped by quiet sorrow, where does treatment end and identity begin? As the years pass, melancholy settles deeper into medieval daily life, not as a crisis, but as a condition to be managed quietly and continuously. You begin to understand that this diagnosis does not demand dramatic intervention. It demands adjustment, small changes, repetition, patience. Melancholy is treated less like a storm and more like a season that might never fully pass. Physicians describe it as stubborn by nature. Black bile is thick. It moves slowly. Once it gathers, it resists correction. This belief shapes expectations. Improvement is meant to be gradual. Sudden happiness is viewed with suspicion. A melancholic person who laughs too freely may be accused of imbalance in the opposite direction. Treatment plans emphasize structure. You are advised to wake at consistent hours, to eat at regular times, to avoid extremes of temperature and emotion. Your life becomes carefully arranged to prevent internal stagnation. Routine itself becomes medicine. Music is frequently prescribed. Not loud or exciting music, but gentle melodies. Certain modes are believed to soften black bile. You are encouraged to listen rather than perform. Participation might overstimulate. Listening allows the body to absorb harmony without effort. Conversation is also prescribed, but selectively. You are not encouraged to debate or argue. You are encouraged to listen to pleasant stories and familiar voices. Laughter is allowed in moderation. Too much joy is thought to dry the body further and lead to exhaustion. Travel is sometimes recommended for those who can afford it. A change of scenery is believed to stir internal motion. New air, new food, and new sights may loosen stagnant thoughts. For many people, this is impossible. Instead, they walk beyond the village when they can. They sit near water. They watch animals. These small movements are thought to matter. Physical exercise is gentle. Walking is favored. Riding is acceptable, if it does not excite fear. Hard labor is avoided when possible. Exhaustion is believed to worsen melancholy by drying the body too much. Rest is important, but so is movement. The balance is narrow. Food remains central. Warm and moist foods are encouraged. Soups, stews, and broths appear often. Spices are used carefully. Too much heat aggravates yellow bile. Too little leaves black bile unmoved. Wine is allowed in small amounts. Excess leads to despair rather than cheer. Sexual activity is discussed cautiously. Too much is draining. Too little leads to internal congestion. Moderation is again the guiding principle. Married life is considered stabilizing for melancholic individuals because it provides routine and companionship. Despite these efforts, many people do not improve noticeably. Their sadness remains steady. It does not deepen dramatically, but it does not lift either. This persistence leads to a shift in attitude. Melancholy becomes something to live with, rather than overcome. Households adapt. Family members learn when to speak, and when to remain quiet. The melancholic person is given space but not too much. They are included but not pressed. Their moods become part of the rhythm of the home. This accommodation has limits. When melancholy interferes with work or prayer, concern grows. Prolonged withdrawal raises fears of madness. At this point, intervention becomes stronger. Physicians may prescribe purgatives to expel black bile forcefully. These treatments are harsh and unpleasant. They weaken the body in hopes of freeing the mind. Religious guidance intensifies as well. A melancholic person may be urged to confess more frequently. Spiritual counselors encourage obedience and humility. They warn against dwelling on internal states. Excessive self-examination is believed to deepen despair. Melancholy is often blamed on idleness. Even when physical fatigue is present, the idea persists that inactivity allows black bile to settle. This creates pressure to remain productive, even when motivation is gone. Work becomes both burden and remedy. In monasteries, melancholy receives special attention. Monks write extensively about sadness that arrives during prayer. This condition is feared, because it undermines devotion quietly. It does not rebel openly. It drains meaning slowly. Monastic rules include strategies for managing this sadness. Fixed schedules, communal labor, limited solitude, silence balanced with chant. These practices are designed to prevent the mind from turning inward too long. Some monks write personal accounts describing how melancholy feels. They describe heaviness, slowness, a sense of distance from the world. These descriptions are remarkably consistent across centuries, yet the explanation remains the same: black bile, coldness, dryness. In secular life, melancholy shapes reputation. A melancholic person may be described as wise or difficult depending on context. Their silence may be read as depth or suspicion. Their seriousness may command respect or avoidance. Women experience the diagnosis differently. Female melancholy is often linked to bodily weakness. It is explained through coldness and moisture. Emotional expression is expected yet also criticized. A woman who withdraws is seen as fragile. A woman who complains is seen as unstable. Treatment for women emphasizes domestic order. Cleanliness, warmth, and routine are stressed. Emotional distress is folded into expectations of obedience and patience. There is little space for questioning circumstances. Men with melancholy are more likely to have their condition intellectualized. Their sadness is linked to thought. Their withdrawal is tolerated longer. This difference reflects broader assumptions about gender and intellect. As decades pass, melancholy becomes deeply familiar. It appears in medical guides, sermons, letters, and literature. It becomes part of how people understand the human condition. Not everyone is cheerful. Not everyone is balanced. Some lives are heavier than others. Yet questions linger quietly. Why does melancholy strike during times of loss and upheaval? Why does it follow grief so reliably? Why does it ease sometimes through companionship alone? These patterns suggest causes beyond constitution. Some writers begin to hint at memory and experience. They suggest that past events leave traces that disturb internal balance. This idea remains vague and secondary, but it introduces something new: the possibility that the mind carries history. Still, the language of lifestyle dominates. If melancholy persists, it is assumed that something in daily life remains incorrect. Responsibility stays with the individual. As you move through this world, you see how a diagnosis becomes a way of life. It shapes habits, relationships, and expectations. It offers explanation, but also containment. It allows sadness to exist without demanding understanding. As you prepare to rest again, you may wonder whether melancholy is truly a condition of the body, or whether it is the name given to endurance itself. If sadness becomes ordinary and survival continues alongside it, then what exactly is being treated? And if a life can be organized around quiet sorrow without resolving it, what does healing even mean? By the later medieval period, melancholy has fully settled into ordinary life. It is no longer a rare condition discussed only by physicians and monks. It is familiar. It has become part of how people explain endurance itself. You hear it spoken of quietly in households, and openly in learned circles. Someone has always been melancholic. Someone always will be. What changes is not the diagnosis, but the attitude toward it. There is a gradual acceptance that melancholy may never fully disappear. It may soften, it may sharpen, it may retreat for a time and return without warning. This expectation shapes how people live with it. The goal shifts from cure to containment. Physicians continue to write about treatments, but their tone becomes less confident. They speak of managing symptoms rather than restoring full balance. They recommend ongoing care rather than decisive intervention. Melancholy becomes something you carry rather than something you defeat. You see this most clearly in long lives. Older people are assumed to be melancholic by default. Sadness is folded into age. Slowness is excused. Withdrawal is tolerated. The body is drying. The warmth of youth has passed. This explanation comforts families. It makes decline predictable and therefore bearable. Yet, this acceptance comes with loss. When sadness is expected, it is rarely questioned. When melancholy is normal, it is rarely examined. People stop asking what happened. They stop asking what was lost. The diagnosis replaces the story. You also see this in writing. Letters from the period describe daily life in careful detail. Food, weather obligations. Between these details you find brief mentions of heaviness or weariness. These are not elaborated. They are not explained. They are stated, and then life continues. Melancholy becomes background noise. Among scholars, the idea of productive melancholy grows stronger. Sadness is reframed as the cost of insight. Reflection requires distance. Distance produces sorrow. This logic allows intellectual suffering to be justified. It also traps thinkers inside it. If sadness fuels wisdom, then relief feels like failure. Some writers begin to resist this quietly. They note that companionship often lifts melancholy more reliably than medicine. They observe that grief precedes sadness more often than constitution. They notice that joy returns unexpectedly in moments of connection. These observations are recorded cautiously. They challenge the framework without naming the challenge. Religion also adapts. Sermons acknowledge sorrow as part of earthly life. Endurance becomes a virtue. Melancholy is reframed as a trial rather than a defect. This allows people to live with sadness without constant correction. It also reinforces patience over change. For women, this shift has mixed effects. Acceptance reduces urgent intervention, but it also deepens confinement. A melancholic woman is expected to endure quietly. Her sadness is woven into expectations of obedience and sacrifice. There is little room for relief beyond routine. For men, acceptance can mean stability or stagnation. A melancholic man may be valued for seriousness. He may also be left alone longer. Help arrives late if at all. His endurance is admired even when it erodes him. By the end of the medieval period, melancholy has shaped generations. It has influenced work habits, family structures, and religious practices. It has taught people how to live alongside sadness, without expecting explanation. As new ideas begin to emerge in later centuries, melancholy does not vanish. It changes names. It shifts explanations, but its core remains. The experience of prolonged quiet sorrow continues. The medieval framework lingers in language and attitude. You still hear people speak of being naturally sad, of having a heavy disposition, of carrying something from birth. These ideas echo the medieval belief in constitution. Even when science changes, the habit of explanation remains. What the medieval world lacked was a way to separate suffering from identity. Melancholy became something you were rather than something you experienced. This made life predictable but narrow. It allowed people to survive but not always to heal. And yet, there is dignity in how people endured. Without modern tools, they built lives around care, routine, and community. They acknowledged sadness without demanding spectacle. They accepted limitation without surrendering entirely. As you reflect on this long history, you see how a diagnosis can become a lifestyle, and how a lifestyle can shape generations. Melancholy was not only a misunderstanding of the mind, it was a way of organizing life around uncertainty. Perhaps the enduring question left behind is not whether medieval people were wrong, but what is lost when sadness becomes ordinary, when endurance replaces understanding, when explanation replaces listening. And if a society learns to live quietly with sorrow for centuries, how deeply does that sorrow shape everything that comes after? You fall asleep in the medieval world, knowing that sleep is not rest alone. It is exposure. When your eyes close, your body does not shut down. It opens. The senses withdraw from the outside world, but the inside becomes active, unpredictable, and dangerous. Dreams are not dismissed as imagination. They are monitored carefully. They are watched for signs. When you wake in the morning, the question is not whether you dreamed. It is what you dreamed. Dreams are believed to rise from the same internal forces that govern waking life. The four humors do not rest at night. They shift. They settle. They stir images inside the sleeping mind. Because of this, Dreams are treated as evidence. They are clues to the state of your body and the future of your health. Physicians ask about them. Priests listen to them. Family members remember them. A troubling dream is not brushed aside. It is discussed quietly at breakfast. It may change what you eat that day. It may change whether you work or rest. It may even prompt a visit to a healer. The logic is simple and widely accepted. During sleep, the rational mind loosens its grip. The body speaks more freely. What appears in dreams is therefore less filtered. If something inside you is wrong, it will reveal itself when you sleep. This belief has ancient roots. Classical medical writers describe dreams as vapors rising from digestion. Heavy meals produce chaotic dreams. Cold stomachs produce disturbing images. Black bile produces dreams of darkness, confinement, and sorrow. Yellow bile produces fire, heat, and pursuit. Blood produces pleasant dreams of social activity. Phlegm produces dreams of water, fog, and confusion. You learn early to associate certain images with danger. Dreams of falling suggest weakness. Dreams of drowning suggest excess moisture. Dreams of fire suggest overheating. Dreams of being chased suggest internal agitation. These interpretations are not symbolic in a modern sense. They are physical diagnostics. If you dream of funerals, physicians worry about melancholy. If you dream of feasting, they worry about excess blood. If you dream of violence, they suspect bile. Even recurring dreams are treated as signs of persistent imbalance. You are encouraged to report dreams honestly. To hide them is to hide illness. But honesty carries risk. Certain dreams suggest moral failure. Sexual dreams in particular are treated carefully. They are not dismissed as natural. They are seen as evidence of bodily heat and moral vulnerability. This creates quiet anxiety around sleep. You cannot fully control what appears in dreams, but you are still held responsible for their meaning. If your dreams are troubling, something about your life must change. Dreams are also connected to digestion. You are told not to eat heavily before bed. Late meals corrupt sleep. They disturb the stomach. Disturbed digestion produces impure vapors. Those vapors rise to the brain and shape dreams. This chain of causation is repeated endlessly in medical texts. As a result, evening routines are strict. Supper is early and light when possible. Certain foods are avoided. Cheese is dangerous at night. Fish is risky. Wine must be limited. You are advised to sleep on your right side first to encourage proper digestion. The position of your body matters. The posture of sleep affects the flow of humors. Sleeping flat on your back is discouraged. It invites vapors upward. Sleeping too curled restricts circulation. Even pillows are discussed in medical writing. For those who suffer ongoing distress, dreams become especially important. A melancholic person's dreams are watched closely. Dark images confirm diagnosis. Restless sleep justifies intervention. Dreams become proof that the sadness is real and physical. Religious interpretation overlaps constantly. Some dreams are thought to come from God, others from the devil, most from the body. Distinguishing between them is difficult and taken seriously. A dream that encourages despair may be demonic. A dream that encourages repentance may be divine. A dream that reflects daily concerns is likely bodily. This layered interpretation means that dreams operate on several levels at once. They are medical signs, moral warnings, spiritual messages. A single dream can be discussed for days. Ordinary people learn basic interpretation. You know when a dream is worrying. You know when it is meaningless. Children are taught not to exaggerate dreams, but they are also taught not to ignore them. Certain professions pay special attention. Soldiers watch dreams before battle. Travelers watch dreams before journeys. Pregnant women are watched closely. Their dreams are believed to influence the unborn child. Frightening images may mark the infant physically. You do not wake and say it was just a dream. That phrase does not yet exist in the same way. Dreams are part of reality. They are events that occurred internally. They carry consequences. Over time, collections of dream interpretations circulate. They list common images and their meanings. These books are used carefully. They are not treated as entertainment. They are guides for vigilance. Yet, there is unease beneath this certainty. Dreams are unpredictable. Good people have disturbing dreams. Healthy people dream of illness. Not every dream leads to visible outcome. These inconsistencies are noted, but tolerated. Physicians adjust explanations. A dream may reflect temporary disturbance rather than chronic imbalance. A frightening dream may be caused by cold air at night. A pleasant dream may be misleading. Interpretation becomes cautious but never dismissive. As you lie down again, preparing for sleep, you are aware that the night may reveal something about you that you cannot see while awake. You cannot choose what appears. You can only prepare your body and hope for clarity. And as your eyes close, a quiet question lingers. If dreams are messages from the body, and the body is shaped by daily life, then how much of what you dream belongs to you, and how much belongs to the world pressing in around you? As you continue living in this medieval world, you become more attentive to sleep itself. Dreams do not arrive randomly. They are believed to follow rules. If the rules are understood and respected, dreams can be predicted, softened, or even prevented. Sleep becomes another form of discipline. Physicians emphasize preparation. What you do in the hours before sleep matters more than the sleep itself. Evening is treated as a threshold where the body begins to loosen its defenses. You are advised to slow your thoughts gradually. Sudden excitement before bed is dangerous. Arguments, intense reading, or strong emotion are discouraged. They stir the humors and leave residue that surfaces as troubling dreams. You notice how often people apologize for bad dreams. They explain what they ate. They mention the cold in the room. They describe worries from the day before. These explanations are offered not as excuses but as context. A dream is never isolated from waking life. The stomach remains central. Digestion is believed to continue through the early hours of sleep. If digestion is poor, vapors rise unchecked. These vapors cloud the brain and shape images. This is why night terrors are often blamed on heavy or inappropriate food. A dream is treated like a report from the stomach to the mind. Certain foods gain reputations. Beans are notorious. Onions are suspect. Cheese is infamous. Spices are controversial. Even fruit is debated. Apples may cool or disturb depending on timing and quantity. People learn these rules slowly through experience and repetition. The bedroom itself is considered part of treatment. Fresh air is encouraged, but drafts are dangerous. Dampness is feared. Cold stone walls are covered when possible. Bedding is adjusted by season. Too much warmth encourages excess blood. Too little invites phlegm and stiffness. Light matters as well. Total darkness is not always preferred. A faint lamp may be left burning to reduce fear and disorientation. Sudden waking in darkness is believed to confuse the spirits and produce panic. When disturbing dreams recur, the response becomes more deliberate. A physician may ask you to describe not only the images, but the order in which they appeared. Fragmented dreams suggest instability. Repetitive dreams suggest persistent imbalance. A dream of falling repeated over many nights raises concern about weakness in the head or heart. A recurring dream of being trapped suggests thickened black bile. A dream of pursuit suggests unresolved agitation. These interpretations are not symbolic in a modern sense. They are mechanical. Something inside is pressing. Treatment follows accordingly. Diet is adjusted first, then sleep schedule, then environment. Only if dreams persist do stronger interventions appear. Bloodletting may be used if dreams indicate overheating. Cooling herbs may be used if fire appears too often. Purgatives may be prescribed if images suggest stagnation. Dreams are also used to track recovery. A person who begins dreaming of open spaces after confinement is thought to be improving. A person who dreams of calm water after storms is thought to be stabilizing. Physicians take these changes seriously. They are signs that internal motion is correcting itself. Religious authorities continue to observe carefully. Dreams that inspire despair are addressed with prayer and guidance. Dreams that inspire fear without cause are treated as temptation. Dreams that repeat sinful acts are taken as warnings. Yet even here bodily explanation remains present. Sinful dreams may arise from heat rather than intent. This layered interpretation creates uncertainty. You may receive different advice from a physician and a priest. One focuses on diet, the other on discipline. Most people follow both. The systems overlap rather than compete. For ordinary people, dreams become part of conversation, but not confession. They are shared cautiously. Certain images are softened when spoken aloud, others are omitted. You learn which dreams are safe to describe, and which should remain private. Children are taught to report frightening dreams immediately. Adults reassure them, but also adjust routine. A child who dreams repeatedly of monsters may be kept warmer at night. Their meals may be changed. Their play may be moderated. The dream is treated as communication, not imagination. As you age, you notice patterns in your own dreams. You learn which nights produce restlessness. You learn which habits calm your sleep. This knowledge feels practical and earned. It gives you a sense of control in a world where many things are uncontrollable. Yet doubt grows quietly. You hear of people who dream vividly, despite careful living. You hear of people who eat poorly and sleep peacefully. You hear of dreams that predict nothing and change nothing. These stories circulate but do not disrupt the system. They are absorbed as exceptions. Medical writers respond by refining categories. Some dreams are dismissed as residue of daily thought. Others are elevated as signs of deeper imbalance. Interpretation becomes more cautious, but no less confident. You begin to sense that dreams carry weight, because they are one of the few spaces where inner life becomes visible. In a world without private language for emotion, dreams offer shared images. They allow suffering to be described indirectly. As you lie down again, you prepare carefully. You eat lightly, you calm your thoughts. You adjust your bedding, you hope for quiet images. Yet you know that sleep may still reveal something unwanted. And as the night deepens, another question lingers. If dreams are shaped by the body, and the body is shaped by daily survival, then are dreams truly messages from within, or reflections of a life under constant strain? By the later medieval period, dreams have become deeply woven into medical habit rather than dramatic interpretation. They are no longer treated as omens alone. They are treated as data, collected, compared, remembered. A person's dreams over time form a quiet record of bodily life. Physicians keep notes. They track recurring images alongside diet, weather, and mood. They look for patterns. They believe that the body speaks most clearly when the waking mind is silent. Dreams become one of the few acceptable ways to discuss internal distress without naming emotion directly. You notice how this practice changes conversations. People speak about images instead of feelings. They describe being chased rather than being anxious. They describe drowning rather than feeling overwhelmed. This indirect language makes vulnerability safer. It allows distress to be shared without confession. As new medical ideas slowly enter Europe, dream interpretation does not disappear. It adapts. Dreams are no longer always explained as vapors, but they remain signs of internal motion. The body is reimagined as circulation rather than balance. Yet dreams still reflect disturbance. Even skeptics hesitate to dismiss dreams entirely. Too many cases seem to align. Too many people experience relief after adjusting habits based on sleep. The cause may be misunderstood, but the practice feels useful. Religion also adapts. Dreams are increasingly treated as morally neutral unless they inspire action. A dream alone is not sin. Response matters. This reduces fear slightly but does not remove significance. A troubling dream still demands attention. Over time, the practice of recording dreams fades outside learned circles. Ordinary people continue to notice them, but with less urgency. Yet the habit remains. Dreams are discussed in relation to health long after humoral theory weakens. You see this legacy persist in language. Nightmares are blamed on food. Restless sleep is blamed on stress. Vivid dreams are blamed on fatigue. The explanations change, but the instinct remains. Dreams are treated as signals rather than accidents. The medieval world leaves behind an important pattern. It teaches that inner life leaves traces, that the body registers experience even when words fail. Dreams become one of the earliest shared languages for psychological distress. What medieval medicine could not explain was meaning. It could track disturbance but not story. It could see patterns but not causes rooted in memory or trauma. Yet it offered care where none might have existed. People were not told to ignore their dreams. They were told to listen carefully and respond gently. This attention itself provided comfort. Someone noticed. Someone adjusted care. Someone believed the night mattered. As the centuries move forward and science reframes the mind, dreams lose their status as medical proof, but they do not lose their mystery. They remain one of the few places where the inner world becomes visible without effort. You imagine a medieval person waking at dawn after a troubled night. They do not feel foolish. They feel concerned but supported. The dream is part of the shared world. It will be discussed and addressed. Perhaps that is the lasting lesson. Even when explanations are wrong, attention can still be right. The medieval world misunderstood the mechanics of dreams, but recognized their importance. It treated sleep as meaningful rather than empty. As you rest with this history, you may notice your own dreams differently, not as warnings or diagnoses, but as reflections, remnants of the day, echoes of concern, quiet signals from a mind still processing survival. And the question that remains is simple and unresolved. If dreams were once taken seriously because they revealed what could not be spoken, what inner signals do we ignore now simply because we no longer share a language for them? You are born into the medieval world as a woman, and from the moment your body is noticed, it is already being explained. Long before you experience fear, grief, or restlessness, those around you believe they understand why you eventually will. The explanation does not begin with your thoughts. It begins with an organ. The womb. In medieval medicine, the womb is not a passive part of the body. It is active. It is mobile. It is restless. It is believed to move within you, drifting upward or downward depending on conditions. This movement is thought to cause a wide range of physical and emotional symptoms: anxiety, suffocation, sadness, irritability, panic, silence, tears. These experiences are not treated as responses to life. They are treated as mechanical consequences of a wandering organ. This idea comes from ancient medical traditions and remains influential throughout the medieval period. The womb is described as animal-like in nature. It desires moisture and warmth. If denied these, it becomes dissatisfied. When dissatisfied, it moves. When it moves, it disrupts the body. You do not need to feel anxious for long before someone suggests that your womb is unsettled. If you feel short of breath, it may be pressing upward. If you feel heaviness in your chest, it may be lodged near the heart. If you feel sadness without clear reason, it may be pulling downward. If you feel restless and fearful, it may be wandering unpredictably. This explanation is accepted without ridicule. Learned physicians write about it. Midwives work within it. Household advice manuals reference it casually. It is not a fringe belief. It is standard knowledge. You are told that your body requires regulation to prevent this movement. Marriage is often framed as stabilizing. Sexual activity is believed to satisfy the womb and keep it in place. Pregnancy anchors it. Childbirth resets it. Menstruation cleanses it. Each stage of reproductive life is seen as corrective maintenance. If you are unmarried or widowed, concern increases. Without regular sexual activity, the womb is believed to dry out. Dryness leads to restlessness. Restlessness leads to movement. Movement leads to symptoms that resemble what later centuries will call anxiety or hysteria. The term hysteria itself comes from the Greek word for womb. In the medieval world, the condition has many names, but the logic is consistent. Emotional disturbance in women is rarely treated as psychological. It is gynecological. You may experience fear at night. You may feel pressure in your throat. You may weep without knowing why. These are not moments for introspection. They are signals that something inside you is out of place. Treatments focus on coaxing the womb back where it belongs. Strong scents are applied near the genitals to attract it downward. Foul smells are held near the nose to drive it away from the chest. Oils are used. Warm compresses are applied. Baths are prepared carefully. The logic is physical and directional. Pleasant scents lure, unpleasant scents repel. The womb responds like a creature with preferences. You are rarely asked what you are afraid of. Fear itself is not interrogated. It is treated as a symptom rather than an experience. Midwives play a crucial role in managing this belief. They are trusted experts in female bodies. They advise on diet, warmth, posture, and activity. They instruct women to avoid excessive emotion because strong feeling is believed to disturb internal stability. You are encouraged to remain calm, not for emotional health, but for anatomical order. This belief shapes daily behavior. You are warned against prolonged fasting. Hunger dries the body and agitates the womb. You are warned against excessive grief. Sorrow cools and constricts. You are warned against solitude. Isolation allows thoughts to stagnate and internal moisture to shift. Your movements are watched. Your habits are corrected gently but persistently. If you resist, it is assumed you do not understand your own body. Male physicians write confidently about these processes, despite never having experienced them. Their authority comes from texts, not bodies. Women's testimony is considered unreliable when it conflicts with established theory, yet women also participate in maintaining this framework. It offers explanation. It offers language. It offers a way to describe distress without blame. To say your womb is unsettled is safer than saying you are afraid or overwhelmed. In this sense, the theory provides cover. It allows suffering to be acknowledged without challenging social structure. The problem is inside the body, not in the world. This becomes especially clear during periods of crisis. Famine, war, and plague increase fear and uncertainty. Women report more symptoms. The explanation remains internal. The womb reacts to stress, but stress itself is not addressed. Young women approaching puberty are watched carefully. Mood changes are attributed to bodily transformation. Fear is expected. Silence is tolerated. Emotional intensity is normalized but also constrained. Older women face different assumptions. After menopause, the womb is believed to dry permanently. This dryness is thought to produce bitterness, suspicion, and irrationality. Older women who express fear or anger are seen as physically degraded rather than situationally distressed. The theory adapts to each life stage without questioning itself. As you move through this world, you learn that your inner life is not fully yours. It is interpreted constantly. Your feelings are translated into anatomy. Your distress is rerouted into organs. This does not mean care is absent. On the contrary, attention is constant. Advice is abundant. Treatments are offered quickly, but understanding remains shallow. No one asks what it feels like to live under constant vigilance. No one asks how fear changes when it is never named. As night falls and you lie awake feeling tightness in your chest and a quiet unease you cannot explain, you may accept the explanation given to you. Perhaps something inside has shifted. Perhaps it will settle again. But a quieter question lingers beneath the certainty. If your fear is always attributed to movement within your body, then where does your experience go? And if the explanation never looks outward, how much of your life is being misread? As you move deeper into life under this framework, you begin to notice how pervasive the theory of the wandering womb truly is. It shapes not only personal health, but social expectations, marriage, and daily routines. The womb is no longer just an internal organ. It is a force that structures the life of every woman who is observed, advised, or treated within this worldview. Physicians and midwives alike continue to insist that emotional and physical balance are inseparable. Your fear, restlessness, or irritability is always tied to anatomical movement. If you are anxious, it is not the world that causes it. The womb has shifted upward. If you feel heavy or sluggish, the womb presses downward. Physical alignment dictates emotional state. The advice is repetitive and highly regimented. You are told to maintain warm, moist conditions in your body to prevent agitation. Clothing is layered carefully to preserve heat. Baths are timed and measured. Diets emphasize foods that are soft, warm, and stabilizing. Spicy, sour, or heavy foods are thought to provoke movement. Even the timing of meals is carefully considered. Breakfast and supper are especially important because empty or overloaded stomachs disturb internal balance. Sleep, too, is a battleground for balance. The sleeping posture is meticulously prescribed. Lying flat on your back invites the womb to drift upward. Curling too tightly invites compression. A side-lying position, ideally supported by blankets or pillows, is considered stabilizing. Lights, scents, and room temperature are all adjusted with care, as even minor changes can provoke restless nights or troubling dreams. Daily behavior is monitored constantly. Solitude is risky, quiet reflection is risky, excessive laughter or emotional excitement is risky. Social interaction is medicine, as is work that maintains rhythm and predictability. You are urged to remain engaged without overstimulation. Moderation is not only a moral guideline, it is a survival strategy for the womb. Marriage is framed as a practical solution. Sexual activity satisfies the womb's desires and keeps it in place. Pregnancy and childbirth anchor it. Physically and symbolically, women who remain unmarried are closely observed. Their restlessness is interpreted as an active organ, a danger to both body and mind. Widows and single women are encouraged to remain busy, to travel, and to maintain physical warmth. The womb must be placated, or it will assert itself in symptoms. Religious authorities reinforce this framework. Women are taught that calm, obedience, and patience are protective. Emotional expression is carefully moderated. A crying fit or sudden anger is interpreted not as psychological stress, but as an internal misalignment. Prayer and devotional routines are prescribed to stabilize both body and spirit. Spiritual and physical care converge seamlessly. Children are inducted into this worldview early. Pubescent girls are watched closely for signs of agitation. Mood swings, sensitivity, and irritability are attributed to the newly mobile womb. This shapes education and expectation. Activities are regulated. Play, study, and domestic chores are balanced to prevent excess movement. Fear and restlessness are not simply natural, they are medical events. As you grow older, the theory adapts to each stage of life. Menstruation is treated as a corrective cleansing. Pregnancy anchors and redirects the womb. Postpartum recovery is carefully managed. Menopause introduces dryness and bitterness. Emotional intensity is tolerated in youth, but interpreted as dangerous in maturity. The life course becomes a series of interventions designed to maintain anatomical and emotional stability simultaneously. Despite all this observation and intervention, inconsistencies emerge. Not all women respond in the same way. Some experience intense fear or restlessness, despite careful adherence to advice. Some remain calm, even when routines are disrupted. Physicians attribute these differences to constitution, temperament, or heredity, but uncertainty persists. The womb theory bends to accommodate anomalies, rather than allowing the framework itself to fail. At the same time, the theory provides women with a language for otherwise invisible experience. The movement of the womb offers an explanation for fear, anxiety, and sadness. It validates distress while containing it. Instead of moral judgment, the response is corrective care. Herbs, scents, posture, and warmth offer practical interventions. The theory shapes attention without demanding self-blame. Yet, there is tension. Emotional experience is redirected into anatomical explanation. Your fear is never simply fear. Your sadness is never simply sadness. Agency is shifted from the mind and environment to an internal organ. Experience becomes data to be interpreted, regulated, and controlled. You may comply willingly, because advice feels helpful, warmth comforts, gentle exercise improves mood, baths soothe tension. But underlying this is a subtle loss, the sense that your inner life belongs fully to you. Thoughts, feelings, and fears are filtered through others' interpretations. They are read, corrected, and managed before they are acknowledged. As the years continue, this framework remains largely unquestioned. Texts circulate widely, midwives instruct new generations, physicians write guides for husbands and caregivers. Knowledge spreads not just in medical manuals but through daily life. The wandering womb becomes both explanation and constraint. And yet a question persists quietly in your mind. If fear, anxiety, and restlessness are always read as movement within the womb, what is left of your personal experience? If care is directed at the body while the world around you remains unchanged, does treatment address suffering, or merely contain it? By the later medieval period, the theory of the wandering womb has fully entrenched itself as the standard explanation for women's emotional and physical experiences. It is cited in medical texts, recommended by midwives, reinforced by religious authorities, and absorbed into everyday life. Yet, as pervasive as it is, it begins to reveal its limitations, not because physicians or caregivers recognize error, but because human experience proves too varied and persistent to be fully contained. You see this in households and villages. Women still experience anxiety, restlessness, or sorrow, despite careful attention to diet, posture, warmth, and activity. Some respond well to the prescribed treatments, finding relief in baths, herbs, or routine. Others remain unsettled, their symptoms recurring or intensifying. These differences are explained in terms of temperament or constitution, but they hint at something the theory cannot fully capture, that human experience is shaped not only by internal organs, but by external conditions, memory, and circumstance. Marriage and motherhood are assumed to stabilize the womb, but reality is more complex. A newly pregnant woman may feel ecstatic at the prospect of childbirth, yet be plagued by despair and agitation. A woman who has given birth multiple times may still experience restlessness or tension. Treatments persist, heat, massage, scents, but relief is inconsistent. The womb theory provides structure, but it cannot fully account for variation in feeling. Older women face new interpretations. After menopause, dryness is believed to dominate, producing irritability, suspicion, or melancholy. Emotional intensity is read as physiological rather than psychological. Social roles and restrictions compound the perception that women's internal experiences are inherently unstable, yet the same coping strategies, routine, warmth, diet, and observation, continue to be prescribed, even when their effect is limited. In learned circles, some physicians begin to note exceptions more frequently. They observe that women's anxiety sometimes correlates more with grief, environmental stress, or social constraints than with the position of the womb. They speculate that emotional disturbance might arise independently of anatomy. These observations are tentative, cautious, and rarely published. The theory persists largely because it offers a tangible explanation and a framework for intervention. The consequences of this system are profound. Women's inner lives are continually interpreted, regulated, and sometimes dismissed. Fear, sadness, or longing is rarely taken at face value. It is either redirected toward anatomical correction or contained as evidence of imbalance. Personal agency is constrained by medical authority, social expectation, and cultural belief. Yet paradoxically, the framework also provides validation. Suffering is acknowledged, even if its source is misunderstood. Daily life is shaped by these interventions. Sleep, meals, posture, activity, and social engagement are all monitored. Women learn to anticipate observation and regulation. They internalize the logic of care and correction, adjusting behavior to maintain balance in both body and reputation. Emotional and physical states are inseparable in the medieval mind. Each change in feeling demands attention to bodily routine. Religious guidance reinforces this interconnection. Prayer, confession, and devotional discipline are seen as stabilizing both soul and body. Emotional intensity is managed through spiritual practice, and physical treatments are complemented with moral oversight. The mind, body, and spirit are treated as a single system in constant negotiation with external forces. Despite its flaws, the theory of the wandering womb has a lasting influence. It shapes medical practice, caregiving strategies, and cultural assumptions about women for centuries. Even as new anatomical knowledge and psychological theories emerge in later periods, echoes of this framework persist in language, expectations, and the tendency to link emotional experience with physical constitution. As you consider the lives of medieval women, it becomes clear that the wandering womb is more than a medical theory. It is a lens through which society interprets fear, anxiety, and restlessness. It structures care, constrains behavior, and shapes social roles. It both validates and limits experience. The theory endures because it provides explanation, but it endures at the cost of personal autonomy and a nuanced understanding of emotional life. The legacy of the wandering womb prompts reflection. How often are experiences, fear, sadness, restlessness, interpreted through frameworks that obscure their true causes? How often are bodies treated while minds and circumstances remain unexamined? And if a theory can provide both care and constraint, insight and misunderstanding, what does that reveal about the intersection of medicine, culture, and human experience? As you leave the medieval world and return to your own thoughts, you may wonder whether the stories of restless wombs are simply historical curiosities, or whether they reveal something enduring about the human desire to explain, contain, and manage the mysteries of life and emotion. The question lingers, unresolved, and invites reflection that stretches beyond centuries. You awake in a medieval town, and notice immediately how central blood is to understanding the body. Blood is not merely a fluid that circulates. It is a measure of life, a vehicle for humors, and a tool for control. If you feel heavy, sluggish, feverish, or melancholic, the first response is often not rest or diet, it is bloodletting. Bloodletting is ancient, inherited from classical medicine, and by the medieval period it dominates medical practice. Physicians believe that humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile must remain balanced. Excess blood, in particular, is thought to cause fever, anger, agitation, and other disturbances. Removing it, carefully and deliberately, restores equilibrium. The practice is not casual. It involves tools, technique, and timing. Veins are carefully selected, often in the arm, but sometimes in the neck or foot. Cupping is used to draw blood toward the skin, facilitating removal. Leeches may be applied, especially in areas difficult to access. Each step is codified in medical texts. The amount removed is precise, determined by age, constitution, season, and the patient's presenting symptoms. You notice that bloodletting is justified for nearly any ailment. Headaches, fevers, mood swings, digestive issues, and even melancholy can all be treated with the same procedure. Physicians differentiate subtly. Some remove blood more cautiously, some more aggressively, but the principle is consistent. Too much blood disrupts balance. Removing it corrects both body and mind. Timing is considered crucial. Certain days of the week are preferred, often guided by astrology. The moon's phase, planetary positions, and even the alignment of stars are consulted to determine optimal moments. A miscalculated date, it is believed, can render the treatment ineffective or even harmful. The procedure itself is ritualized. A basin of clean water is prepared. Instruments are sterilized as well as medieval knowledge allows, often using boiling water or alcohol in later centuries. The patient is positioned carefully. Veins are palpated. Tourniquets may be applied. Incisions are made or leeches attached. The bleeding is monitored, sometimes over hours. Recovery involves rest, light diet, and careful observation. For patients, the experience is simultaneously frightening and reassuring. The removal of blood is immediate evidence that something is being done. Even if the underlying condition is unclear, the act of bloodletting confirms medical attention. People measure its success by changes in appearance, pulse, or energy. Temporary relief often occurs, which reinforces belief in the practice. Bloodletting is not free from risk. Excessive removal can weaken, cause fainting, or invite infection. Inexperienced practitioners may misjudge quantities. Nevertheless, the practice persists for centuries, valued more for its symbolic and procedural certainty than for consistent results. You also notice the social dimensions. Noble households maintain private physicians. Townspeople rely on barber surgeons or local healers. Public procedures may be performed in market squares or private chambers. Observation of the patient's response becomes part of community knowledge. Stories circulate. Lady X was bled and recovered. Master Y fainted, but the fever broke. These narratives reinforce cultural faith in the practice. Bloodletting is intertwined with other treatments. Diet is adjusted. Herbs are administered. Baths are prescribed. Sleep is structured. The aim is systemic correction, with blood removal as the centerpiece. If symptoms return, the procedure is repeated. It is cyclical, ritualized, and expected. Yet questions remain even in the medieval mind. Some physicians notice cases where patients worsen after treatment. Others observe that some individuals recover without intervention. Medical texts record these anomalies cautiously, often attributing them to unknown humoral variations or improper timing. The practice persists because it offers a framework of action and authority. In households, fear and hope coexist. Families encourage bloodletting as proof that the condition is recognized and being managed. The sight of flowing blood, while alarming, is a tangible indicator that medicine is present, active, and intentional. The ritual reinforces trust in the healer and in medical order itself. As you follow a day in this world, it becomes evident that bloodletting shapes not only bodies but social expectations. Obedience, patience, and attention are required. The patient must remain still, comply with dietary and postural recommendations, and report changes faithfully. The act of bleeding is entwined with moral discipline, as well as physical therapy. And yet, even as you witness the procedure, an uneasy question remains. If health is determined by the balance of humors, and balance is restored through the removal of blood, what happens to those who fail to recover despite perfect technique? How much is the body understood, and how much is belief sustaining the practice? As you move further into the daily practice of medieval medicine, you notice how bloodletting extends far beyond a single procedure. It becomes a rhythm, an expectation, and a lens through which all symptoms are interpreted. Physicians do not merely perform the act, they incorporate it into ongoing monitoring, adjusting the body's balance over days, weeks, and sometimes months. The amount of blood removed is rarely arbitrary. Medical manuals are meticulous. Tables and charts detail extraction quantities based on age, season, and constitution. A young adult may lose more than an elderly patient. A person with a strong pulse may endure more bloodletting than one who is weak. The humors are measured indirectly through pulse, complexion, and energy. Each adjustment is a calculated attempt to restore harmony. Timing of the procedure is also paramount. Astrological charts are consulted. Certain days, hours, or lunar phases are believed to maximize the body's receptivity. Ignoring these guidelines risks failure, not merely because of superstition, but because alignment is thought to influence internal humoral currents. Physicians argue that the body's natural rhythms must be respected, or the humors rebel. You see bloodletting applied to a wide spectrum of conditions. Fever is treated with moderate removal to cool the body. Melancholy calls for more delicate intervention, as excessive bleeding might exacerbate black bile and worsen sadness. Digestive complaints prompt targeted phlebotomy near the legs or feet, intended to draw congestion downward. Even headaches or insomnia are traced back to excess blood. Each symptom has a corresponding site and method. The practice is not uniform. Barber surgeons perform much of the bleeding for commoners, sometimes relying on intuition or apprenticeships rather than detailed manuals. Physicians, however, maintain authority for high-status patients, emphasizing precision and the integration of the procedure into broader treatment plans. The social hierarchy of care is reflected in technique, attention, and follow-up. Observation is continuous. Patients are watched before, during, and after bleeding. Color of blood, speed of flow, and patient response are all recorded mentally or in writing. Families participate, noting changes in mood, appetite, or energy. Recovery is measured meticulously. If fever persists or melancholy lingers, a second procedure is scheduled. Treatment is iterative. Bloodletting is not a single act, it is an ongoing dialogue between healer, patient, and body. Diet and lifestyle accompany bleeding. Warm broths, light meals, and gentle activity are prescribed. Rest is necessary to prevent fainting. Baths, herbal poultices, and sleeping posture complement the phlebotomy. Each element reinforces the others. The system is holistic, even if the understanding of physiology is flawed by modern standards. You also notice that bloodletting carries symbolic weight. The act itself communicates concern, attention, and action. The visible flow of blood reassures families that illness is being addressed. In this way, the practice functions as both medicine and performance. The psychological impact is as significant as the physiological, whether consciously recognized or not. Yet dangers persist. Excessive bleeding weakens the patient. Infection is possible. Misjudged timing or technique can cause collapse or death. These risks are acknowledged but tolerated because the theory prioritizes humoral balance. The possibility of harm does not discredit the method. Rather, it is treated as a challenge to skill and observation. Even within the medical literature, there is recognition that bloodletting does not guarantee cure. Some individuals recover with minimal intervention. Others succumb despite precise application. Physicians often attribute these outcomes to unknown variations in temperament, constitution, or environmental factors. Failure is not seen as evidence against the practice, but as an indication of complexity beyond immediate understanding. The procedure influences social behavior. Patients learn obedience, attentiveness, and patience. Caregivers develop vigilance and precision. Communities accept ritualized medicine as part of daily life. Bloodletting reinforces the authority of physicians and the hierarchy of care, while embedding medical practice in both private and public spaces. And as you observe this world, one question becomes increasingly pressing. If the removal of blood is considered the ultimate correction of imbalance, how often does belief itself sustain the perception of health? If patients feel better because they see action being taken, rather than because humors are truly aligned, where does treatment end and psychology begin? By the later medieval period, bloodletting has become more than a medical procedure. It is a cultural institution. It structures daily life, defines medical authority, and shapes expectations about illness, recovery, and responsibility. Its logic is so deeply ingrained that even failure is folded into the framework. If a patient does not improve, it is attributed to misjudged quantity, incorrect timing, or unusual constitution, not to the fallibility of the practice itself. The act of bloodletting extends beyond the individual to the social and moral realm. It embodies attentiveness, diligence, and the application of learned knowledge. Families, neighbors, and even patients themselves view bleeding as evidence that the body is being cared for, that illness is recognized and addressed. Its visible physical nature reinforces authority and communicates concern, creating a network of expectation and ritual. For the patient, the experience is paradoxical. The procedure may be painful, alarming, or exhausting, yet it provides reassurance. Blood flows, humors are adjusted, and attention is focused. Relief may be temporary, partial, or illusory, but the act itself confirms that care is active. The psychological dimension, trust, observation, ritual, blends with the physiological, sustaining faith in both healer and method. Medical texts continue to prescribe refinements, adjustments based on age, temperament, season, and planetary alignment. More sophisticated physicians begin to correlate outcomes with observation and experience, subtly introducing empirical reasoning without abandoning humoral theory. The process becomes increasingly systematic, a blend of art, science, and ritual. Despite its persistence, anomalies remain. Some patients improve without bleeding. Some deteriorate despite perfect technique. These cases are cautiously documented, explained away, or attributed to individual variation. The framework remains largely unchallenged, because it provides a coherent method to interpret health and illness. The certainty it offers outweighs inconsistent outcomes. Bloodletting also intersects with broader medical practices. Diet, sleep, posture, exercise, and herbal remedies are coordinated to support the humoral balance. Each element reinforces the other, forming a comprehensive, if flawed, system of care. Physicians and caregivers operate in a delicate choreography, adjusting multiple variables while monitoring responses, creating a rhythm that structures life around health management. Yet the broader lesson is not merely about technique. Bloodletting illustrates how belief, observation, and ritual shape the understanding of the body. The procedure persists because it offers a framework of action, authority, and reassurance. It is as much a social and psychological practice as a medical one. In a world where the causes of disease are mysterious, bloodletting provides tangible engagement, order, and meaning. Looking back, you can see the enduring consequences. This practice defines the boundaries of acceptable care, constructs social hierarchies, and embeds assumptions about the body, gender, and health into culture. It shapes expectations for centuries, influencing both medical theory and the patient experience long after its efficacy is questioned. And yet a quiet question lingers. If health is interpreted and regulated through procedures like bloodletting, how often does the act of care itself, ritual, observation, and belief, become as important as the physiological result? When the success of treatment is inseparable from confidence in authority, what do we learn about the human need for certainty in the face of the unknown? The medieval obsession with bloodletting ends not with resolution but with reflection. The body is never just a body, medicine is never just a method, and the act of care carries consequences far beyond the immediate pulse of blood. It teaches that medicine, society, and belief are deeply intertwined, and that the simplest acts can shape the understanding of life itself. As night falls in the medieval world, sleep is not merely a retreat from the day, it is a carefully managed state, laden with both practical and spiritual significance. Darkness is dangerous, and the hours between sunset and sunrise are approached with caution, routine, and ritual. You do not simply lie down and close your eyes, you prepare, protect, and observe. The medieval household is structured around these hours. Doors are bolted, windows shuttered, and fires maintained at strategic points. Children are brought indoors, animals secured, and night watchmen assigned where resources allow. Sleep is intertwined with survival. It is as much about defense against threats as it is about rest. Beds themselves are objects of attention. You notice the layering of textiles, mattresses stuffed with straw, feathers, or reeds, topped with blankets and sheets. Pillows are chosen for height and firmness, not comfort alone, but to support the body in ways thought to influence humoral balance. The position in which you sleep is significant. Lying flat may invite bad humors to rise. Curling too tightly restricts circulation. Side-lying is often recommended for warmth and blood flow. These details are recorded in medical manuals and household guides alike. Sleep is also deeply connected to hygiene. The medieval mind is wary of contamination, both physical and spiritual. Feet are washed, hair is combed and tied, animals are separated from sleeping spaces when possible. Residual heat and odors are managed with herbs and infusions. Lavender, rosemary, and rue are placed in pillows or hung above beds to purify air and discourage restless spirits. The scent is believed to calm the mind, steady the humors, and protect against nocturnal mischief. Nighttime routines extend to food and drink. Heavy meals close to bedtime are avoided. Spices, alcohol, and certain meats are limited, because digestion continues through the early hours, producing vapors that can disturb sleep. Warm broths or light snacks are preferred, designed to soothe rather than excite. Even the timing of the evening meal is carefully calculated in some households, aligning with both natural cycles and astrological advice. Fear of the supernatural shapes practices as well. Night is believed to be a time when malevolent forces are active. Ghosts, spirits, and demons may wander freely. Children are often taught prayers before bed, and adults repeat protective incantations or recite psalms. Religious artifacts such as crucifixes or holy water are placed near sleeping areas. The boundary between health and piety blurs. Protection of the body is inseparable from protection of the soul. Sleeping arrangements reflect social hierarchy and practical necessity. Noble households may have separate sleeping chambers for family members, servants, and guards. Peasant families often share rooms or even beds, relying on warmth and numbers for comfort and safety. Even in shared spaces, precautions are taken. Small fires, protective charms, and careful attention to vulnerable individuals. Every element is guided by the assumption that night carries risk. Dreams are not ignored during these hours. They are observed, remembered, and interpreted as potential signs of illness, spiritual guidance, or future events. Even the positioning of the body may influence the nature of dreams according to humoral theory. Lying on the right side is thought to encourage calm, while the left side may provoke unrest. Such beliefs guide nightly behavior and reinforce the sense that sleep is both a physical and moral practice. Children are taught early to approach sleep cautiously. Stories emphasize vigilance, prayers, and hygiene. Fear is natural but manageable if proper routines are followed. Adults model careful preparation and reinforce rituals, embedding patterns that persist into adulthood. Sleep becomes a collective, structured event, rather than an individual, private one. The physical environment, diet, spiritual practice, and social supervision converge to make sleep a deliberate and regulated state. This extensive preparation reflects a deep understanding of the importance of nighttime hours, even if the reasoning is framed in terms of humors, spirits, and superstition rather than modern physiology. And yet, for all the care, uncertainties remain. Nightmares persist. Illness strikes during sleep, fires start, intruders appear, and dreams sometimes warn without reason. Preparation mitigates risk, but cannot eliminate it entirely. The medieval world is organized, ritualized, and disciplined, but not invulnerable. As you lie down in this environment, you sense that sleep is more than rest. It is a practice, a responsibility, a ritual intertwined with health, safety, and morality. Every small detail, position, bedding, scent, diet, prayer, contributes to survival as much as comfort. And you are left with a quiet question to carry into the night. If every aspect of sleep must be managed to protect body and soul, how much of rest itself is experienced naturally, and how much is shaped by rules, fears, and expectation? As you continue to explore the medieval night, you realize that sleep is a carefully negotiated state, influenced by both the household and the wider environment. Nighttime is not merely a pause from labor, it is an active period of management, surveillance, and protection. Every detail of your evening and sleep routine reflects beliefs about safety, health, and morality. In many households, preparation begins hours before sunset. Lamps are trimmed and fueled, torches and candles placed strategically. Fires are stoked not just for warmth, but for visibility and deterrence. Doors are secured, and windows shuttered to keep out drafts and intruders alike. The family gathers together, reinforcing both practical defense and psychological reassurance. Noise and conversation diminish gradually, signaling the approach of sleep as a controlled communal ritual. Beds remain a focal point of nighttime attention. Bedding is layered meticulously, straw or feather mattresses, covered with linen or wool, with blankets or furs on top. The placement of pillows is deliberate, often aligned with humoral theory to support circulation and maintain balance. Side lying is encouraged to stabilize internal humors, while excessive curling or lying flat is discouraged. The body is treated as a system in which position directly influences health and comfort. Hygiene continues to be central. Hands, faces, and feet are washed, hair is combed, and clothing adjusted to maintain warmth and prevent chill. Herbs, lavender, rosemary, rue, and sometimes more exotic preparations are placed around sleeping spaces. These scents are believed to calm the mind, soothe the humors, and ward off spirits. Even the air in the room is managed. Dampness is feared, and airflow is directed to avoid chills or congestion. Diet is tailored to influence sleep. Evening meals are light, warm, and digestible. Heavy or spicy foods, excess meat, and alcohol are avoided, because the body's digestive processes continue during sleep, producing vapors that could disturb humoral balance. Broths, porridge, and mild dairy products are common. Timing is also important. Meals must allow sufficient digestion before rest. In some households, fasting is observed to purify the body and promote clearer, calmer sleep. Children and young women are watched closely, both for health and moral instruction. Nighttime fears are normalized but regulated. Prayers are recited, bedtime routines repeated, and protective charms or religious symbols used. These practices reinforce the connection between safety, piety, and physical well-being. Anxiety, restlessness, or nightmares are interpreted as signals for additional care. Perhaps a warm drink, a slight adjustment of bedding, or a whispered prayer. Dreams occupy a dual role. They are both diagnostic and spiritual. Physicians, midwives, and family members watch for patterns in sleep and dream behavior. Nightmares may signal imbalance in humors or unresolved emotional stress. Pleasant dreams are interpreted as evidence of harmony. Even the body's position during sleep is thought to influence dream content. Lying on the right side encourages calm. The left side may provoke agitation. Dreams are read, recorded, and sometimes discussed as guides for future care. Beyond domestic arrangements, The night is filled with external threats. Animals, thieves, and natural hazards add urgency to vigilance. Fires may need tending, animals may wander, and guards may patrol. These external dangers are mitigated through careful routine. Torches are lit, doors secured, and occupants assigned to keep watch. Even in supposedly safe households, sleep is never entirely unmonitored. The combination of physical preparation, diet, ritual, and surveillance creates a complex system of nighttime management. Sleep is a practice in attentiveness as much as rest. The medieval mindset treats slumber as a state requiring intervention, structure, and care, a condition to be cultivated deliberately rather than passively experienced. Yet, uncertainty persists. Despite meticulous preparation, nightmares recur, illness strikes, and accidents happen. The structures in place reduce risk but do not eliminate it. Dreams may warn or mislead. Bodies may betray the careful routines imposed upon them. The night remains both a space of rest and a domain of unknowns. As you follow these practices, a subtle tension becomes clear. Sleep is necessary for life, yet it is never wholly natural or unstructured. Every habit, posture, and precaution shapes the experience of rest, while simultaneously reflecting deeper anxieties about health, morality, and safety. And as you settle into the medieval night, a lingering question emerges: if sleep must be so carefully controlled to protect body and soul, to what extent is rest itself an act of obedience rather than recovery? How much of nighttime tranquility is shaped by expectation, ritual, and fear, rather than the body's natural rhythms? As the medieval night unfolds, you begin to see sleep not simply as a biological necessity, but as a carefully choreographed interaction between body, environment, and society. Each precaution, layered bedding, warm meals, controlled air, and protective herbs, is part of a larger system designed to minimize risk while maximizing rest. Sleep becomes both a physical state and a social ritual, entwined with household routines, religious observances, and communal vigilance. The bed, once merely a place to lie down, becomes a locus of management. Pillows support the body in positions believed to regulate humors, while blankets and furs maintain heat and prevent imbalance. The arrangement is deliberate. Too much heat might provoke agitation. Too little might invite phlegm or stiffness. Positioning the body correctly is seen as essential not only for comfort, but for maintaining harmony between the physical and humoral systems. Herbs and scents continue to play a critical role. Lavender, rosemary, rue, and other aromatic plants are placed in pillows, hung from ceilings, or sprinkled on bedding. Their purpose is dual: to soothe the mind and to guard against malevolent spirits. Dreams are influenced subtly by these interventions. A calm dream may indicate humoral balance. A restless or frightening dream may signal imbalance or spiritual disturbance. The boundary between medicine and superstition is porous, yet coherent within the medieval worldview. Meal timing and content are equally crucial. Heavy or spiced foods are avoided in the evening to prevent digestion from disturbing humors. Light broths, porridge, and mild dairy are preferred. Eating patterns align with sleep cycles, ensuring that the body enters rest without excess heat, cold, or moisture. Even the timing of digestion is believed to influence dream content, reinforcing the idea that night is a continuation of the body's regulated state. Children and adolescents are especially observed. Nighttime fear or agitation is expected, but carefully managed through ritual and guidance. Prayers, charms, and gentle reassurance serve to both calm the child and reinforce the social order. Young people learn early that sleep is a structured experience. It demands obedience, attentiveness, and participation in household rituals. Their dreams, fears, and behaviors are read as indicators of both physical and moral health. The wider household is never entirely dormant. Guards may patrol, fires are tended, and animals are secured. Even in secure spaces, vigilance is considered necessary. This constant attention reflects a broader understanding of the night as a time of potential danger, natural, social, and supernatural. The lines between care, precaution, and surveillance blur, creating a culture in which sleep is an ongoing responsibility rather than a private escape. Yet, despite all care, uncertainty persists. Nightmares recur, illness strikes in the dark, and accidents occur. Sleep may bring rest or disturbance. Dreams may warn, confuse, or inspire. Bodies sometimes betray the meticulous precautions imposed upon them. The medieval system mitigates risk but never eliminates it entirely, highlighting the limits of human control over natural and spiritual forces. What emerges most clearly is that medieval sleep is not passive. It is a performance, a ritual, and a practice of attentiveness. Preparation, observation, and intervention transform the night into a structured environment where the body, household, and spirit are continually managed. Even in rest, life is disciplined, observed, and interpreted. And so a final reflection lingers. If every aspect of sleep is managed, from diet to bedding, from herbs to prayer, what does it mean for the experience of rest itself? How much of slumber is natural recovery, and how much is shaped by vigilance, expectation, and the cultural imagination? The question remains unresolved, extending beyond the medieval night into our own understanding of rest, fear, and the unseen hours between dusk and dawn. As you step into a medieval household, you begin to notice that every object carries meaning beyond its immediate function. A broom is not simply a tool for sweeping. A mirror is not merely reflective glass. Candles, knives, combs, and even shoes are believed to possess power, both protective and dangerous. In the medieval imagination, the ordinary is never neutral. Objects are infused with potential for influence, capable of bringing fortune or misfortune depending on context and use. The household is structured around these beliefs. Items are carefully placed, oriented, and handled according to custom. A broom is never left upside down, as it is said to sweep away luck or invite malevolent spirits. Knives are stored carefully, leaving one open on a table may attract violence or injury. Mirrors are covered at night to prevent spirits from entering, or to avoid capturing the soul. Candles burn not just for light, but for warding, ritual, and divination. Each act of daily maintenance is imbued with an awareness of unseen consequences. You notice that superstition functions as both caution and explanation. When accidents occur, a spilled pot, a fractured chair, or a sudden illness, the cause is often traced to mismanaged objects. Forgetting to hang a broom or misplacing a key is not simply negligence, it is an active risk factor, a disruption of the subtle balance between the household and spiritual order. These beliefs guide behavior, creating a framework in which safety, morality, and luck intersect. Special attention is paid to thresholds. Doorways, windows, and gates are liminal spaces where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. Placing objects at entrances is a common protective measure. Shoes are arranged to prevent bad luck. Salt is scattered to repel malevolent spirits. Small charms or amulets are hung to guard the family during vulnerable transitions such as childbirth, travel, or illness. The careful arrangement of objects transforms the household into a network of wards and signals, both practical and symbolic. The objects themselves are often treated with ritual. Combings of hair, arrangements of herbs, and the placement of food on altars or shelves follow inherited guidance from manuals, local customs, or the advice of wise women and clergy. These practices reflect an understanding of causality that blends observation, tradition, and spiritual interpretation. The goal is not merely superstition for its own sake, but a structured method for influencing outcomes in a world of uncertainty. Even the simplest tools are charged with potential. A needle may prick accidentally, signaling misfortune, unless accompanied by the correct words or gestures. A bowl left upside down can disrupt fortune in domestic work. Candles are lit with intention. One may represent protection, another a prayer for the sick, another to ward off envy or spirits. Every interaction with objects becomes a deliberate practice of awareness, ensuring that daily life is regulated not only by labor but by symbolic engagement. You notice that these beliefs are learned early. Children are instructed not only in practical household skills, but also in the correct handling and placement of items. Forgetting or mismanaging an object is corrected immediately, sometimes with admonishment, sometimes with ritual remedy. Superstition is education. It enforces care, attention, and a moral order, intertwined with domestic competence. At the same time, objects provide a sense of agency. In a world where illness, misfortune, and natural hazards are often beyond control, carefully placing a broom or lighting a candle becomes a meaningful act. It offers reassurance that action has been taken, that risk is mitigated, and that the household is protected. These practices transform ordinary objects into instruments of influence, bridging the gap between uncertainty and action. Yet tension remains. Despite careful attention, accidents and misfortunes still occur. Illness strikes, items break, fires ignite. Superstition cannot guarantee outcomes. It only structures responses. In this sense, the practice functions as a method of understanding and coping, rather than an infallible system of control. It is as much about perception, preparation, and narrative as it is about causality. As you observe the household in motion, The invisible logic of superstition emerges. Every movement, every placement, every ritualized act connects the material and spiritual worlds. Objects are agents and symbols simultaneously, reflecting the medieval understanding that the mundane and the mystical are inseparable. And as the day draws to a close and objects settle into place, a lingering thought arises. If so much attention is given to the arrangement and use of material items, how much of daily life is lived in response to belief rather than immediate necessity? How much of routine is shaped by unseen expectations, and what does this reveal about the intersection of perception, control, and meaning in the medieval world? As the day progresses in a medieval household, the significance of objects becomes increasingly apparent. Superstition is not merely an abstract belief, it is embedded in the fabric of daily life, influencing work, domestic order, and social behavior. Each item, no matter how ordinary, carries potential for impact, and your interactions with it are carefully regulated to maintain safety, luck, and spiritual balance. The kitchen, for example, is a space of constant negotiation. Pots, knives, and utensils are arranged with intention. A knife left pointing toward the doorway is considered dangerous, capable of attracting quarrels or accidents. Spilled salt is not overlooked, it must be thrown over the left shoulder to avert misfortune. Hearths are tended not only for cooking and warmth, but as centers of protective energy. Sparks, smoke, and embers are read as omens, and mishandling them can invite ill luck. Even simple chores, like sweeping or stirring, are done with attention to rhythm and direction, often accompanied by muttered blessings or charms to prevent harm. Bedrooms and sleeping spaces are no less carefully managed. Bedding is arranged not only for comfort, to ward off spiritual and physical disturbances. Mirrors are covered at night to prevent spirits from entering or trapping the soul. Candles are positioned to protect against unseen forces, and herbs are sprinkled on sheets to encourage restful sleep. Even the placement of shoes or personal items carries meaning. Misaligned objects may be interpreted as invitations to misfortune. Children and servants learn quickly that mistakes in arrangement have consequences, reinforcing the educational aspect of superstition. Objects also mediate social relationships. Gifts, tokens, and amulets carry symbolic weight. A brooch given to a loved one is not merely decorative. It may confer protection, express intention, or signify loyalty. Conversely, mishandling a borrowed item, losing a tool, or breaking a household object can disrupt trust or suggest spiritual imbalance. The material world becomes a network of signals, guiding behavior and interaction, ensuring that individuals participate in the maintenance of order beyond mere labor. Religious and magical beliefs intermingle seamlessly in this system. Holy water sprinkled in thresholds complements charms hung from beams. Candles lit during the day may serve both devotional and protective purposes at night. Incantations, blessings, and rituals are often applied to objects to activate their power. The boundary between superstition and practical precaution is thin. Both operate under the assumption that attention, intention, and correct handling matter profoundly. Travel, trade, and seasonal changes further highlight the role of objects. Shoes, tools, and containers are treated with care before journeys, often accompanied by prayers or protective rituals. Misplaced items are read as warnings or misfortune. Well-managed equipment signals preparation and prudence. Even the organization of carts, wagons, and storage spaces reflects a layered system of protection, efficiency, and symbolic vigilance. Yet, anomalies and contradictions persist. Despite careful handling, accidents happen. Items break, fires ignite, and illness strikes. Superstitions cannot guarantee outcomes, they only shape perception and behavior. This is part of their function. The system provides a framework for interpreting uncertainty and asserting control in a world where unpredictability is constant. The psychological effect is significant. Objects give individuals a sense of agency and responsibility. By arranging, cleaning, blessing, or protecting an item, a household member actively participates in shaping fortune and warding off danger. The mundane becomes meaningful, and action, however small, carries weight in a world where unseen forces are thought to influence outcomes. Through these practices, the boundary between material and spiritual, practical and symbolic becomes indistinct. Objects are not merely tools, they are extensions of intention, morality, and precaution. The household itself becomes a carefully managed network of signs and actions, a physical manifestation of belief. And yet, a quiet question lingers as you watch the household in motion. If daily life is so deeply shaped by the placement, handling, and ritual surrounding objects, how much of your attention is directed outward toward necessity and how much is absorbed in the interpretation and management of unseen forces. What does this tell you about the medieval understanding of causality, control, and the intertwining of material and spiritual worlds? As evening falls and the household settles, the power of objects becomes ever more apparent. The broom, the mirror, the knife, the candle, each continues to exert influence, both real and imagined, shaping behavior and expectation long after their immediate practical use has ended. In this world, superstition is not peripheral, it is woven into the very structure of domestic life. The broom, for example, is central to both cleanliness and fortune. Left standing upright, it might sweep away luck or invite misfortune. Properly placed, it protects the home and the family within. Knives, if carelessly positioned, may provoke quarrels or accidents, but when stored and handled correctly, they symbolize readiness and order. Mirrors, candles, and even common utensils are similarly charged. Their placement, orientation, and use convey caution, intent, and protection simultaneously. Every interaction is meaningful. The impact on children is profound. From an early age, they learn that objects are not neutral. Misplaced shoes, broken dishes, or neglected herbs are interpreted as lapses that can invite ill fortune. In response, rituals develop, prayers whispered over items, salt thrown over the shoulder, small charms placed in protective positions. Superstition becomes a form of education, teaching attention to detail, respect for household hierarchy, and a sense of responsibility for outcomes beyond immediate perception. Superstitions also structure social interactions. Borrowed or gifted objects carry weight. A misused tool or a damaged item can signal carelessness or disrespect, while properly managed objects reflect diligence, intention, and virtue. In this way, superstition intertwines with morality. The management of material items reinforces social norms, ethical behavior, and communal vigilance. Objects serve as both tools and tests of character. Even as practices are repeated meticulously, uncertainty remains. Fires may ignite despite precaution, illness may strike even the most careful household, and accidents occur with alarming regularity. Superstition does not eliminate risk. It provides a framework for understanding, responding to, and managing the unpredictable. In a world where misfortune can appear suddenly and inexplicably, these rituals offer reassurance and a sense of agency. The interplay between material and symbolic functions is striking. A candle is light, warmth, and protection all at once. Herbs are aromatic, medicinal, and spiritual. Objects are invested with power by attention and intention, demonstrating the medieval belief that the ordinary is inseparable from the extraordinary. Every object mediates interaction with unseen forces, acting as a bridge between human action and cosmic order. By the time night fully descends, it is evident that superstition is more than a collection of quirky beliefs. It is a comprehensive system that organizes daily life. The household is maintained not only through labor, but through constant observation, ritual, and interpretation. Objects are instruments of both protection and meaning, structuring behavior, regulating attention, and embedding moral and social guidance in physical forms. And yet, despite the care, questions remain. If so much attention is devoted to objects, how much of life is guided by belief rather than necessity? How much of order, safety, and well-being depends on perception, ritual, and intention, rather than immediate physical action? Superstition mediates both experience and behavior, revealing a medieval understanding of causality, where material, spiritual, and psychological forces converge. The story of objects in the medieval household concludes not with certainty, but with reflection. Ordinary items are never neutral, daily routines are never merely practical, and the line between reality and belief is continually negotiated. The way people interact with objects teaches us that attention, ritual, and intention shape not only the household, but the very perception of life, health, and fortune.